I'm Anna Delaney with Information Security Media Group. I'm thrilled to be joined by Elizabeth Harz, CEO of Veriato. Elizabeth, really good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Anna.
So Elizabeth, digital transformation has ushered in this new way of working, hybrid working. How are organizations navigating this space?
It really depends on the company, but I think it's hard this week to look at any session or any keynote that isn't talking about the changes that have happened in workplaces around the world. The rise of hybrid and remote as a permanent part of cultures has just really changed how people are working and how security professionals and leaders are trying to navigate that new world that we are now in.
So what are the new risks this trend has ushered in for organizations and their workforce?
Yeah, so as you know, the kind of kitchen table has become the new edge of the network, which just brings in completely new dynamics for security professionals, folks working in any location, not just from home, but from the coffee shop or whatever location works for them that week, has really created new dynamics that have to be dealt with in new ways. A couple of studies, including a recent one sponsored by IBM, showed that breaches that happen in a remote setup are actually up to $1 million US more, cost up to $1 million US more in light of the remote dynamics. So I think this is why you're hearing a lot about this here at RSA this week. Everyone from executives to security professionals are trying to figure out, how do we manage this as we move forward?
So how are organizations doing? Where do you see them struggling as they navigate this space?
Well, I think, first of all, there's just a much broader approach to this question at this time. We talk a lot about workforce behavior analytics. It's extremely important for companies to really get a baseline of what's going on with their employees and their organizations. Just because we're in a work from anywhere world doesn't mean that the obligations that companies have to keep their employees safe and protected, to keep their customers and their customers' data protected, that doesn't go away because people are working from different locations and potentially on non-corporate devices and things like that. And so having organizations use monitoring technology to be able to get a baseline and understand what's going on in their organization, which will help, and we can talk more about predictive analytics and ways to kind of get ahead of problems and threats. But step one is really getting a baseline, just like with anything else. If you're going to do any type of research or analysis, where are we starting with and analyzing what's going on in the organization with these new dynamics in a work from anywhere world.
So talk more about what good looks like and the technology that can help.
Yeah, we talk a lot about when you think about other parts of the organization, whether that's inventory management or Salesforce and pipeline management or financial planning and analysis. All of those activities have technologies that allow organizations to be successful. And from an insider risk and insider threat management perspective, there is great technology that allows for this to be addressed as well. And so I think one of the areas that have changed significantly with the rise of a work from anywhere world is much more communication about this topic. When we see customers deploying really well, they're being very upfront and transparent, and they're communicating a lot about what's going on. So in general, being able to tell employees that new tools are being used in order to protect the employees, to protect the customers and customers' data. And that transparency and communication really creates a much more positive work environment and a collaboration between the employees and the leadership and security organization to keep the company safe, which everybody wants.
Do we have a sense of how employees feel about being monitored?
Yeah, I think it really does depend on the situation, and our customers, like I said, those who are very upfront about what's going on when they share the data with their employees, some of which we've talked about, the cost of breaches that have increased significantly with remote work, the reality that a lot of breaches happen through accidents and, very well-intentioned employees, but they, do things that put data at risk. An example we hear a lot is employees that are kind of cutting and pasting data from one place to another just to be able to enter it into another field, right? But a credit card number or other types of PII, they're pasting to a Microsoft Word doc that might be on a different, even a home computer or something like that. Those are mistakes that people make without any ill intent, and being able to have software and technology that alerts organizations and helps protect the customer's data as well as the organization before there's a breach is very helpful for the company as well as for that employee, right? I think in general also the companies that are definitely assuming innocence instead of assuming guilt and approaching this new era in that sense, employees feel very empowered and included. There's also a really interesting recent survey that UVA and USC did together that talked about how people actually trust technology to monitor them more so than other humans because there's much less bias. So in the past, where perhaps people might jump to conclusions that parents kind of racing out of the office to pick up a child are less productive, when in fact they're getting back online later and can be some of the most productive employees in the organization, right? Where technology is not making those judgment calls, they're just looking at productivity, engagement, sentiment, and can report that from a much more unbiased perspective. So when you ask about how employees feel, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So when it comes to implementing this technology, what missteps do you or have you seen organizations make in terms of implementation?
Yeah, I think really when organizations are implementing it and they're not talking about why they're using the tool, they're not sharing success stories of how the technology helped them get ahead of issues. Sexual harassment can happen even when people are not co-located, right? And technology and tools like this can help find language that is suspicious and allow leaders and HR professionals to have discussions with folks before things get escalated. And so when organizations aren't talking about it or not celebrating what's working well, I think there is just a suspicion and potential negativity. When there's education and communication, it's much more positive.
Well, Elizabeth, how can Veriato help organizations in this new era of work?
Yeah, so we are over 20 years old and have been helping companies, both big and small, across industries of all sizes, to succeed for over 2 decades. And so partnering with a trusted partner who has a lot of experience in this space and is able to bring best practices to bear, to show a lot of examples on what works and what hasn't worked as well, is very helpful. As I mentioned before, the risk scoring and artificial intelligence that we've been using have been under development for a very long time and have addressed a lot of the issues that are being talked about this week with regards to ChatGPT and many of the risks associated with newer technology. It's important to continue to evolve, but it's also very important to use tried and true methods and be very careful as we use these technologies with data and PII in the organization. So Veriato provides the blueprint to help these organizations deploy well, protect data, and deal with the rollout and communication with employees also.
Well, this has been excellent. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Anna, thank you for your time and having me.
Thanks for watching. For ISMG, I'm Anna Delaney.